The study sessions became a routine every evening at 5:30. Ethan walked into the library, and every evening, Lila was already there, quiet, focused, and ready at first. They spoke only about equations and formulas, but over time, the conversations began to stretch beyond the pages of the textbooks. One night, as they packed up their things, Ethan asked, "Do you ever get tired of numbers?" Lila paused, considering the question. "Not really," she said. "Numbers don't lie. They don't pretend to be something they're not." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That sounds oddly specific." She gave a small smile. "Maybe I just like things that make sense." He nodded, though he didn't fully understand, but he didn't press her instead. He started telling her about his own life, about the pressure from his school, about the expectations from his father, who was a well-known lawyer in the city. "He says this exam will decide everything," Ethan admitted one evening. "University, career, all of it. And what do you want?" Lila asked. He hesitated. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've just always done what was expected." She nodded slowly, as if she understood more than he'd said out loud. "Well," she said, "this exam is just one step, not the whole staircase." He smiled. "That sounds like something a teacher would say." "I'm not a teacher," she replied, "just someone who likes puzzles." But to Ethan, she felt like much more than that. As the days passed, he began to notice the small details of her life. She always arrived early, sometimes before the library even opened. She never bought food inside, even when the cafe area was full of students eating snacks and when the library closed. She didn't rush off to catch a ride like everyone else. She stayed sitting quietly on the steps one evening. Ethan came back after forgetting his calculator. The library was already locked, but Lila was still there, sitting in her usual spot, reading under the streetlight. "You're still here?" he asked. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, you forgot something?" "Yeah," he said, "but it's really cold. Don't you have somewhere warmer to go?" She hesitated. "I manage," she said. Wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Ethan nodded slowly, sensing her discomfort. The next day, he brought 2 cups of hot chocolate, handed one to her as soon as she sat down. "For brain power," he said. Her eyes lit up slightly as the warmth seeped into her fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. It became another part of their routine study. Hot chocolate, short conversation sometimes. They laughed sometimes. They just sat quietly, watching the rain hit the windows, and slowly Lila began to relax around him. One evening, Ethan noticed her tablet. The corner was cracked, but the screen was filled with complicated diagrams and notes. "Are those your own solutions?" he asked. She nodded. "You wrote all this yourself?" Another nod. He shook his head in amazement. "You could probably teach the class better than our actual teacher." She smiled faintly. "I just like to understand things fully." "Why don't you go back to school?" he asked before thinking. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted it. A smile faded. "It's complicated," she said quietly. Ethan opened his mouth to apologize, but she shook her head. "It's okay," she said. "Not everything lasts forever. Sometimes you just have to wait." "Wait for what?" She looked down at her backpack. "For the right time." He didn't understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him feel like she was carrying a secret much bigger than either of them. Not everyone was happy about their growing friendship at school. Ethan's classmates began to notice he was spending less time with them. One afternoon, his friend Marcus nudged him in the hallway. "Hey, is it true you've been hanging out with that homeless girl near the library?" he asked. Ethan frowned. "Her name is Lila," Marcus shrugged. "Still, my mom says those kinds of people can be dangerous." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's helped me more than anyone else in this school." "Yeah, but she's homeless," Marcus insisted. "That's weird." "Man." Ethan walked away without another word. That evening, when he met Lila at the library, he watched her more closely than usual. The way she carefully erased mistakes instead of crossing them out the way, she always returned books to the exact spot she found them, the way she thanked the librarian every single day. Dangerous? No, if anything, she was the most gentle person he'd ever met at home. Things weren't much different. One night at dinner, his mother asked, "Who have you been studying with lately?" "Just someone from my old class," Ethan said. His father looked up from his plate. "What's their name?" "Lila." His father's expression didn't change, but his voice sharpened slightly. "Lila Hale?" Ethan blinked. "I think so. Why?" But his father quickly shook his head. No reason, just sounded familiar. The conversation moved on, but his father's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than usual as the exam date approached. The pressure on Ethan grew heavier. Teachers handed out practice tests. Parents talked constantly about results, and every day someone reminded him how important this exam was. One evening, he arrived at the library looking completely drained. "I can't do this," he said. Dropping into the chair, Lila looked up. "What happened?" "I took a practice exam today," he said. "I barely passed. What if I fail the real one?" She slid the test paper toward herself and studied it. "You rushed through the last section," she said calmly. "I ran out of time." "That's because you didn't trust the simpler methods." He sighed. "What if I freeze during the real exam?" She looked at him seriously. "Then breathe," she said, "and remember that it's just another set of problems, nothing more." He shook his head. "It doesn't feel like that." She leaned back in her chair. "When I left the place I was staying," she said slowly, "I didn't know where I'd sleep the next night or what I'd eat or if anyone would help me." Ethan looked at her, surprised, but I kept going. She continued, "One step at a time, because worrying about the whole future at once, it's too heavy." He swallowed. "So you just focus on the next step," she said. "That's all this exam is." For the first time that evening, Ethan felt a small flicker of calm, but the obstacle wasn't just his anxiety. 2 days before the exam, Lila didn't show up. Ethan waited at their table for the Thurshik. "Stis isited." Lila, he checked the steps outside. Empty, not formed in his stomach. The next day, she still didn't come. He asked the librarian if she'd seen her. The older woman shook her head. "Not since 2 days ago." Ethan's chest tightened. What if something happened to her? What if she'd been forced to leave? Or worse, on the morning of the exam, he walked into the testing hall with a heavy heart. Her chair at the library had been empty, and now the seat beside him in the exam hall felt just as lonely as the papers were handed out. He closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered her voice. "It's just another set of problems, one step at a time." He took a deep breath.